In January 2026, a video surfaced of a Syrian soldier smiling darkly and holding up a braid of women's hair. When asked by the person filming him where he'd gotten his twisted trophy from, he responded that it was from a Haval, one of the female Kurdish fighters of Rojava, and that she didn't need it because she was dead already. The soldier laughed as he handled the braid for the camera, clearly enjoying this act of not only mocking, but even desecrating the fallen soldier. However, his enjoyment would be short-lived. Once this video made its way onto social media, it ignited a firestorm of condemnation and fury. Women all over the world, Kurdish and otherwise, began filming themselves braiding one another's hair in solidarity with the Kurdish fighter who had been killed. The Syrian soldier tried to take it all back and claim it was just a misunderstanding, but it was too late. The Kurdish people, already feeling abandoned by their allies in Syria, raised their voice and propelled the braid movement into a global campaign that reached as far as the European Parliament. Why was it this act in particular that created such a backlash? What was it about not just disrespecting a dead soldier, but cutting her braid that led to such anger? Is there something about the meaning of a woman's braid in Kurdish culture and hair in general that might explain how this cruel action could lead to a worldwide uproar?
Welcome to Rushmall, the Kurdish Culture Podcast. Our goal in this podcast is to explore, understand, and share Kurdish culture for the benefit of Kurds and non-Kurds alike. In each episode, we focus on a different aspect of Kurdish culture and how it affects everyday life. Like every culture, Kurdish culture is diverse and always changing. Our hope is to explore both the historic traditions and modern variations, highlighting the opportunities and acknowledging the challenges. With deep respect and admiration, we invite others to join us as we continue to learn more. So, come on into the Rushmall, the black tent where countless generations of Kurds have lived. Let us serve you a hot cup of Kurdish chai, and we hope you enjoy the conversation.
Welcome, friends, to episode 7 of Rushmall, the Kurdish Culture Podcast. With me today, I have Momosta Sarhad. Welcome, Sarhad.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Welcome as well.
And also, we heard Momosta Andy in the intro there. Welcome, Momosta.
Thanks. Great to be back with you all.
All right. And as you mentioned, today we are thinking about something near and dear to the Kurdish people, their hair. And having lived in Kurdistan for some time now, I can affirm that barbershops and salons are a big deal, which we'll think about eventually. But I just want us to try to get our bearings straight as we begin this episode by thinking about the historical background and hair in Kurdish culture. So maybe if you guys could help me understand exactly what we're looking at and how far this stretches back.
It's really interesting when we think about hair in Kurdish culture and we think about history. When you look at the old stone reliefs cut on the mountainsides all across Kurdistan, or the reliefs cut into the palace walls that have been excavated in places like Babylon and Persepolis and Nineveh, what you see is rulers and soldiers with thick, long, carefully manicured heads of hair and big, thick beards. And I've seen pictures even on social media of young Kurdish men growing their hair in similar ways, their beards and their hair in similar ways, and sort of doing a side-by-side of themselves in these old stone reliefs. So it's clear this part of the world for thousands of years has been a place where hair has been viewed as something very significant, so much so that it was etched in stone by empires long ago. But I think Kurdish culture is tapping into some of that deep-rooted tradition that has been there for a long time. And part of it is just the fact that the people who are native to this part of the world or indigenous to this part of the world, they also tend to have very thick, dark, rich hair. And so that's also part of why I think it's been prioritized as well.
To be honest, hair is really different for us as a Kurd. So I mean, in general, hair has an interesting cultural significance among our community as a Kurd. We are not talking only about the head hair hair in general, beard, let's say, in men, the mustache, even in the body hair. I mean, so that, as I always say, I mean, we cannot understand a culture of today that we have. I mean, if we do not go back very deeply into history, because everything has historical root, especially for, let's say, one of the oldest country like Kurdistan. When we talk about hair, we have to talk specifically about the braid, because it has became one of the most significant topic among the Kurdish community, especially, let's say, just take a look just 6 months ago, before talking about the symbols and the meaning of Kurdish braid. In Kurdish culture, braid itself has different meaning, and it's a symbol for different things. The first one is a symbol of beauty and authenticity. If you just take a look in classical Kurdish poetry, long hair and the braid have always been one of the main standards of Kurdish beauty. You can see thousands of poetry, especially from the classical one. It's really fascinating about Kurdish braid, Kurdish kazi, a symbol of status for women. As you said, Mamusta Stephen, in the region of Badinan and Hauraman, women traditionally wore 4D braids, means Chelkazi, but in other regions like Mukrian and Ardalan, the braids were thicker and decorated with beads and coral. So in some regions of Kurdistan, the style of braiding also indicated with women's social status, like a single woman would often have braids, while a married woman typically have 2 or 1 thick kazi braid. For example, you can see that a Kurdish woman would throw their braids behind their shoulders, keeping them back and out of the way, because as we said, Kurdish people are mountain people and they have to work very hard, and that's why we don't prefer our hair just to make into a braid, in 2 braids or 1 thick braid. Then they can work what they want, especially in the countrysides outside of the big cities. But the other thing that has been talked about it is kazi, or Kurdish braid, has a meaning of, is a symbol of grief and protest. If you just take a look in the social media or read, reports on the internet, you can see that people, they just talk about the beauty of the braid. But for our Kurdish people, cutting the braid carries a deep meaning. Let's say, for example, when a beloved man, say a brother, it could be a brother, a father, or a husband, was killed or died, the women cut their braids and place them on his grave. And I've seen in 2014 when the ISIS went to Shangal and they killed a lot of Kurdish Zidi men at that time. Zidi women, they cut their hair and put on their men's grave just to show grief and mourning.
Is there deeper symbolism behind that? What exactly is being communicated?
It has a really deep meaning. It's a way that to tell to their beloved one, after you, I have no more desire for beauty, because they see that their braid, their hair is the core of beauty. But after losing you, what can I do with my beauty? The only thing, the biggest thing that I can do for you, just to show my love and my grief to you, just to cut my braid. So because I don't want to be beautiful, care about my beauty after you, that's why a good way to show your sadness for your beloved one when they passed away.
And Andrew, it came up on the research call as well, right?
That's right. It came up that cutting hair could be a sign of grieving. Cutting a braid could be a sign of grieving, because a woman's hair, a woman's braid is viewed as her beauty, but also a symbol of honor and something that's also extremely valuable. So in different cultures around the world, people will cut off, or they will even pour out things that they own that are very valuable when someone dies, and it's an expression of their grief. And so Kurdish people feel that a woman's hair is something of great value. They invest a lot of time, they invest a lot of money, a lot of love and care into that hair. And so to cut it off is like they are showing the extent of their grief, the depth of their grief, by cutting off something that is so valuable and so beautiful and is even connected to their own honor. 2 other things that emerged in the call were related to the cutting of the braid with the Syrian fighter and the female Kurdish fighter story. One aspect of that helped me understand why people were so upset about it is that historically, families or communities would cut a woman's hair if she did something shameful. was a sign that they had done something shameful, and so they need to be shamed. Not just a woman's hair, a man's hair too. A
That's
young
right.
man could have his dad some of his hair because he's done something to shame the family. And so when this Syrian regime fighter cut this woman's braid, she represents something honorable. She is trying to defend the dignity of her people and to fight for Kurdish rights and freedom. And he has taken sort of an honorable person and he's done something very shameful to her. And so that helped explain some of the backlash to me. And then it's also interesting how the braid, through all of this, the braid is now becoming a symbol of unity. I don't know that it was a symbol of unity before, but after all of this happened, now many Kurdish people are looking to the interwoven different strands of a woman's braid and saying that represents how unified we are even under persecution.
Wow.
I don't know,
That's
Melissa,
powerful.
Sarhad, was that meaning of unity there before, or do you feel like that's a new development?
No, it's a new development. Culturally, we have, this sensitivity from cutting the hair from head hair or from the kazi or a mustache, the beard. It's a way that you can act very disrespectful. But after, let's say, 6 months, this act in Syria against a Kurdish female fighter made us to be united more in a very intensive way. So it's a new development.
Momosta, Andy, you had something to add?
There was another meaning that emerged through talking to Kurdish friends about this. It is not as new as unity, but it's still relatively newer. It comes from this past 100 years of the Kurds sort of and their resistance against the oppression of these different modern states that have divided historical Kurdistan. And that's simply that the braid is a symbol of resistance and war and fighting. And it's a symbol of sort of Kurdish freedom fighters. So one friend from Iranian Kurdistan, from Rojhelat, he told me, he said, we say when it's time for war, the men put their boots on and the women put up their hair into braids. So when it's time for war, the men put their boots on and the women braid their hair. So it's a symbol. And then even, many of these female fighters in Syria, the reason they joined up is because their brothers have already been killed and the brothers and their fathers have already died. And so they sign up, they braid their hair, and they get trained as soldiers.
Wow. Well, speaking of men, I was also struck by the cultural and even religious significance of hair for men. And so can we talk a little bit about that? Like especially kind of the mustache and the beard and how all of this is playing out in the culture?
Among Kurdish people, it's not only the hair on the head that carries meaning. So the beard and the mustache have been just as important, and in some ways, in some regions of Kurdistan, they took more important place. Let's say culturally, from the very, very old times, having a mustache was very deeply connected to masculinity. You wanted to be seen and respected. As a man, say as a grown man, you had to have a mustache. So mustache at that time was a sign that you are growing and that you are fully a man. At that time, mustache was the symbol of maturity, courage and honor. Insulting a man's mustache at that time, even today as well, is considered one of the greatest insults that you could give to someone. And to be honest, I've seen personally in some regions, men would actually make promises by their mustache. And I've seen from my people, and I hear from my father when he told me some stories, especially from his village. They would say something like that when they make a promises by their mustache. They say, if I do not do this for you, then this mustache does not belong to a real man. So,
wow.
You can swear by bread in Kurdish culture. You can swear by your mustache.
Yes. Yeah. That's really unique most times. Yeah. So someone wanted to show the deepest form of disrespectful toward an enemy, so they would shave off his mustache by force. That was considered, even nowadays, it's considered one of the most humiliating things that could be done to a man, because how can you show that you are a real man by your mustache? So if I shave off your mustache, it means I am going to destroy you totally, fully. So as Mausa Andrew said, we swear by bread, by mustache. So if you want, to be disrespectful, so we have to tag the braid, someone's braid or someone's mustache. It's too close to each other.
Well, I'm now cherishing my mustache more than ever. So thank you, Sarhad,
Yeah, and
for
even
that background.
that's why I mean our people love your mustache because it's pure mustache. It's a fully mustache. But to be honest, I just talked about the cultural dimension of the significance of Kurdish mustache. But among some Kurdish religious groups, such as the Yazidis, the Kakis, also known as Yarsanis, grow their
Hmm.
mustache
Yeah.
long, like you, Stephen, as a religious tradition. So it's not just a cultural habit for them;
Right.
it's a part of their faith and identity. So if you ask them why you have a long mustache, you have to make it shorter. It's a kind of disrespectful because it's not something that you can talk about it
Uh-huh.
because it's totally a personal thing.
Well, mostly, Andy, you had
Yeah.
something to add there?
Yes. So when it comes to religious groups in this part of the world, facial hair has been extremely significant for as far back as we have probably written records. But yes, full beards are still viewed as by certain Islamic groups or even Christian groups as a sign of religiosity. Other Islamic groups, it's very important for them to shave their upper lip. And so
Yeah,
they
that's
have
right.
sort of the opposite. So the other opposite, a good man or a holy man should not have a mustache. A holy man should have a beard but shave their upper lip. All of these religious communities have had particular facial hair standards that sort of would mark
Hmm.
a good man or a holy man, sort of set them apart as someone who is seeking to be a religious man. And not just facial hair, but even the Sufi dervishes, some of them have
Yeah,
long hair and they'll grow long hair for sort of their dances. Their sort of dances where they seek to achieve sort of this ecstatic unity with God through mantras and rhythmic movements. You have certain Kurdish groups where these Sufi mystics will grow really long hair because it's helpful in sort of their dances. So yeah, all of these religious groups seek to use facial hair and hair in general as a way to express their religiosity. And that has been something that is very, very long history here. And then the manhood, it's definitely, I feel like mainstream Kurdish culture still looks to the mustache as
yeah, that's
the
right.
sign you are a real man. I had someone in the bazaar when I was 19 years old, my first time living in Kurdistan for a while. He told me one day that I would need 3 ingredients in order to become a man. He said I would need a wife, I would need a son, and I would need a mustache. Because at the time I was clean shaven. So
Sick
I said,
burn.
okay. So and for you guys who we don't have video for this podcast, but you don't know that Stephen has this great handlebar mustache. Then it earns him a lot of respect here in Kurdistan simply because he takes care of his mustache. And it's very impressive.
It's a lot of responsibility. Yeah. I'm reminded, Sarhad, of whenever I shaved my mustache one time, and you said, you can't do that. You got to keep that mustache.
Yeah. Came back home and I told to my wife, I said, Salwa, Stephen shaved off his mustache and he was so strange to me today. Really important to have a mustache. But I want to say something else about the beard, as Mouse Andrew said. So the mustache was strongly connected to masculinity, to manhood, courage, and honor. But the beard carried something very different, totally different from the mustache for Muslims community specifically, and that's right for the whole Kurdish community in general. It had a more religious, spiritual, and dignified dimension. As Maus Andrew said, it was often the Sufi figures and religious men across, different faiths. Even you can see among the Yazidis community, Kakis community, and I think in some ways among the Christian communities, that's right, they wear beards, they have beards, and it was a mark of spiritual depth. And that's right, and not just physical appearances. But nowadays, beard has been changed. You are not a Sufi figure. You are just a normal person and you may not be connected to religion, but having, say, a long beard. But there is something really, really important and it's related with our previous episodes. As we mentioned in the previous episodes, there is a concept among Kurdish people. It's called Rish Spi, the white bearded. So,
Right. Yeah.
even
In
you may
contrast
have,
to young
a
men.
long. Yeah, that's right. It still keeps significance because, for example, if a young man has a long hair, let's say a black long hair, but let's say, for example, we have an old man with a white hair, a white beard. So those beards with this color that turned white with age were seen as peacemakers, as we discussed in the previous episodes. So they carried the weight of experience and wisdom. So they work like a peacemaker, a mediator. So they still have a significant, let's say, role in Kurdish community. So I mean, this beard, this white is a sign of full of wisdom, and it's not nice
Right.
for them to reject, let's say, for example, their decision.
Another thing that I'm mindful of as you talk, I just had a time with an older man who had spent a significant amount of time living in Kurdistan. And he talked about the reverse culture shock he experienced whenever he returned to America. And he kind of lost the cultural presence of the white beard. Like he was saying, in America, there's less respect for the white beards than there is in Kurdistan. And so what you're talking about there is something that I think really surprises Westerners coming in to the Kurdish context, where having white hair is considered a mark of wisdom and good counsel.
In some ways, Stephen, we believe that when your hair is turning into a white color, it means this is supposed to come. It's a sign that this is coming. That's why you have to be wise and you have to be full of knowledge and wisdom. And you have to make, good decisions. You are not young anymore and you are going to be old and you are supposed to be a wise man. But for some people, they don't want to see themselves with the white, let's say, color. They go to the barber shops and they are dyeing and just to make it into a real, black color.
Yeah, well, actually, let's think a little bit about that. Because salons and barbershops are so prevalent across the city and across the region, how are people interacting with their hair in this modern moment in which there's so many styling options, so many places that they can go to get particular cuts or color, as you mentioned? Help me understand what's going on.
I just want to say at the outset that Kurdish barbers are really good barbers. They tend to be very skillful. They tend to be very, take pride in their work, to be very detail oriented. I've noticed a real difference between the Middle East and the West in this regard. I will go to a Kurdish barber any day over an American barber. Now,
Same.
I don't go to the expensive American barbers, so maybe if I did, that would be different. And there's different subcultures in America. But let's say the typical white American barber, I'm not going to him. I'm going to a Kurdish guy if I can. Or any Middle Eastern culture, if I can find one, when I'm in the States, because there's just an aesthetic skill there that is very strong.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
So true.
As you said, I told to Andrew this week, and I said, if you want to have your own business, just go to have a barbershop or a salon, because you'll be successful, because our people love to be there. And so styling is very, very common among our people for both, men and women. Let's say for men, in the old days, the majority of them used henna, which is still very, very common in Kurdistan, especially from the traditional bazaars like the Grand Bazaar, Langa. Our women in the past and nowadays as well, they buy henna, especially, let's say, the best quality of henna from India, from Saudi Arabia, just to color their hair. It's very, very common. So
yeah. We talked a bit about henna in the betrothal and marriage episode, I believe, as a dye that's being used. So henna, again, for those listening, is a type of dye, as Sarhad was saying.
Yeah, that's right. They did it just for beauty, but also for the health of their hair, because they believe that some Kurdish women believe that if they do not dye their hair with henna, then they will get a headache. So it's really good for them just to use henna properly. So, and they used for the bride at that time, just for decoration, for color. But nowadays, since we have markets in a modern sense, in a Western sense, our people use artificial hairs dye. It's really common nowadays. It's also easily available in every supermarket. Maybe you can find it in your neighborhood. So the other thing that I have to say our Kurdish women pay great attention to the color and thickness of their hair. And they, before any special occasions like the Eids or let's say Nowruz, these big events in Kurdish culture, they color their hair and or get it beautifully cut at saloons. We have to know that they don't prefer short hair. This is actually not very common among Kurdish people, and almost everyone prefer hair that is thick, very thick, and too long.
Dyeing hair is very common in a culture where white hair is respected. It's like there's a tension there between how hair is supposed to represent beauty on the one side. So people are eager to hang on to that youthful, thick, dark hair beauty. Whereas on the other side, it's supposed to represent wisdom. But middle-aged people, like me, might want to hang on to that dark, thick hair and not shift yet. So for me, as my hair is becoming more like salt and pepper, as we say in American English, mixed with white, gray, and black, I have friends joking with me that I'm really beginning to show my age, and they're going to have to start calling me Mom Haji soon because of the white hair. But it's not just the color, it's also baldness. Hair replacement surgery is huge here.
Oh yeah, that's right, Mama Santu.
That's also a very good business here, right? Lots of people are going into business of hair replacement. Lots of people are getting it. They want to hold on to that ideal of the thick, dark sort of hair of youth.
Yeah, Sarhad, that was my question. What does it mean when a person is bald?
We don't prefer to be a bald man, Stephen, and that's why it's a good business here nowadays. Even, I believe maybe in the 20 years later, maybe you cannot find any. You can find few people with baldness. And even I've seen a lot of Kurdish men, especially in southern Kurdistan. Let's say they have a small amount of baldness from them. This side, they go to the doctor just to replacement. Let's say it's not shameful, but we don't like it. We prefer to have fully hair. And the other thing, even that's really, really fascinating. And our people planting their beard just to have a full beard, replacement with beard. Have you seen Mama Andrew?
Yes, that's right. Yes, hair replacement surgery to have a fuller beard, because the beard, again, is that symbol of, it can also be a symbol of manliness or
manhood,
religiosity.
The other thing, Stephen, you may see in your neighborhood, when you go to, let's say, local markets, local bazaars, and when you see the barber shops, especially, let's say, 1 week before the Eid, you will see a lot of people. It's too crowded, and our people are waiting just to get the chair and be styled. Now, I've seen a lot of Kurdish young men, let's say, the youth, especially among the youth people, they go to the barber shop just to coming in the hair. That's it. Just for styling, not for cutting.
Right.
I think foreigners will be surprised by just how many barbershops and salons are in Kurdistan compared to other parts of the world. And that just the sheer number of them everywhere shows how much the culture values this.
And it is not too expensive to be in a barbershop.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. The place that I go to in our old neighborhood is the equivalent of $3 American for an adult man's haircut, which is unheard of in many countries. Yeah. Since the 2010s, I feel like beards have become the meaning has been more attached to just style and preference. Before the 2010s, beards were more reserved for, let's say, religion. It had more religious, or maybe someone's a soldier, or it had other meanings. It wasn't so much a style choice. When I was in Slemani in 2008, you saw very, very few men with beards at all, because there was a civil war in the 1990s, and a beard was an indicator at that time that someone was a member of the Islamist parties that were fighting against the other political parties. And so for a long time on the streets of the bazaar after that civil war, if they saw a man with a beard, they thought, well, this guy is loyal to the Islamist parties, and they would drag him into a barbershop and get his beard shaved off and just allow him to keep his mustache. And so even in 2008, there were very, very few beards. And if you had one, it meant you were sort of unusually religious. That's really begun to change as beards sort of made a comeback in global culture. That sort of came into Kurdistan as well, so that now a lot of guys have beards, not because they're religious, not because they're aligned a certain way politically, but simply as a style choice. So that's one way in which meaning has really shifted away from these older meanings into just something we are more familiar with in the West, just style preference.
Yeah. Something that I thought was interesting in relation to this topic of henna was how one person on the research call had shared that henna and her mother's hair had saved the family's gold when they were fleeing an oppressive government. Andrew, can you just give some detail on that?
Yeah, that's right. So this story came from Arzu Khan, who's been a guest on this podcast before in the Nowruz episode. And she was sharing how at a certain point when her family was on the run and they needed to safely hide and transport some of their wealth, what her mom actually did was she decided to use henna to sort of create the thick henna paste in her hair that would dry, which is usual. You leave it in for a long time and the paste sort of dries. You leave that in for a while before you wash it out in the dyeing process. She would use that in order to hide gold coins in her hair such that they would be able to get through the different checkpoints and that sort of family wealth not be lost. So I thought that was a fascinating way in which hair was literally protecting, not just symbolically, but literally protecting sort of family value, family wealth. So often in Kurdish history, Kurdish women have worn their gold in sort of these headdresses as well. And it sort of fits with this theme of a Kurdish woman's gold is something that needs to be portable, it needs to be movable, because Kurds in the past have so often been on the move, whether that's for their semi-nomadic lifestyle or whether that's because of the constant warfare.
Wow, so fascinating. Guys, this has been a great conversation. I've enjoyed learning about hair and Kurdish culture. Two things I'd like to do. Number one, what are some things that Westerners should know coming in, or that you wish more men and women coming in from outside of the culture knew? And second, do we have any Kurdish proverbs that you guys would like to share?
Mousa Sarah, do you have any advice for foreigners about hair?
To be honest, Mouse, and the thing that we discussed, I think there is an American anthropologist you shared with me, Mouse Andrew. In Kurdish culture, when that's right for the women, when Kurdish women came out from home, and with a wet hair, in our culture, it's a sign that these women have just sex with her husband. So in some ways, we are going to understand that this lady is trying to send us a message that he has done already. So it's gonna be good for Western ladies just to make their hair drier and come out engaged, let's say, interact with our people. So that's the most significant practical way that the foreigner should know about that. I think, Mouse Andrew, you know this American anthropologist. I think you've read from one of her book, and but that's totally right. And she got a really important point among our culture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right. Then there's an anthropologist named Diane King who has studied Kurdish culture really extensively. I'm not sure if that particular fact was included in her book, Kurdistan on the Global Stage, or if it was elsewhere. But that is a very important point for foreign women living here to know, that it's viewed as very shameful to go outside with wet hair, and is viewed as sort of unnecessarily causing people to think sexual thoughts when you shouldn't be sort of doing that. So for foreign ladies, that's really important. And I would also say for foreign ladies to know that in Kurdistan, especially in the cities, maybe half of the women cover their hair and maybe half don't. And you should feel free, according to your conscience and your religion, to cover or not cover. I think some foreign women come here and they think, oh, I have to cover my hair because the majority religion here is Islam. And then their neighbors will be very confused. And they'll be like, why are you covering your hair? You're not a Muslim.
Yeah.
And so they need to understand it's not something that's mandatory. There's freedom here. Mm-hmm. However, go into a mosque or some certain religious places, you are going to be asked to wear a headscarf or something like that. So that's really important to know.
Yeah, that's right. I don't like to see the Western that they force themselves just to cover their hair with a headscarf. It's totally fine in Kurdish culture because they are supposed to uncover their hair because we believe that they are not Muslim. And we will be shocked when we see them cover their hair because we are not expecting that. So just they have to feel more freedom, and it's totally fine. It's totally acceptable and predictable that you are not covering your hair. It's totally fine because we are very, very rich in having different nationalities, different culture, things like that. And we are different from the the entire Middle East. But if you want to visit a mosque, because it's a religious place, it's very wise, to wear a headscarf. And in this way, you can show your respect to the Muslim community. They will love you because you show your respect.
Yeah, that's so helpful. Any feedback or advice for fellas, for guys coming into the culture that they should know in regard to hair or perhaps styling and things like that?
So two things real quick. I think for both genders, it's helpful to think that Kurdistan sort of culturally is similar towards hair as maybe the U.S. was in the 1950s. So sort of expected if you go out in public that you are going to have your hair done kind of like my grandfather and my grandmother did their hair. They're good, this product styled. And so for Americans to be aware that, or Westerners or foreigners to be aware that just sort of the standards of grooming here are higher than maybe what we're used to, depending on the Western culture that we are coming from. But if we go back a few generations, it's very similar. So I think that can be a helpful way to just think about it. Okay, how would my grandpa have gone out? What kind of time would he put into preparing to look presentable, to look respectable?
Mm-hmm.
Not that we have to, but that is sort of the norm on the street. And so the sort of shaggy hippie look is not going to be as common here. You're really going to stand out. So that's one thing. And then another thing that is a big difference that we discovered years into living here is that Kurdish men shave their armpits and most Western men do not. And so if you go swimming with a bunch of your Kurdish friends, they're going to see that you don't shave your armpits and they're going to think that's kind of gross and shameful that you don't. And you're going to say, well, really? Well, in my culture, it's kind of feminine and, unmanly to shave your armpits. So it's a really interesting clash of culture there.
Yeah.
That, I still don't exactly know what to do with, but it is there. And right now, it's something that is not often talked about, but it is viewed as shameful and maybe a little unclean to not shave your armpits as a man in Kurdish culture.
It's good to know. Very good to know. Sarhad, we're going to come over to you. Anything that you wish foreign men knew coming in?
The only thing that I want to share, it was January when something happened to a Kurdish female fighter. I saw an American lady with a braid and I said, are you supporting my nation? Let's say Jian Azadi people. She said, what is happening? And I said, why? Because I see that you have a braid and I'm seeing that you are supporting my nation. So when we see, let's say, a foreigner with especially in nowadays, you will see that he is interacting with our culture very intensively and we believe that the braid is belonging to Kurdish people. Well, it's for everyone in the world. But that's the only thing that I wanted to say about the braid.
Sure.
Especially when we see, a braid from a foreigner, we would love to see it.
Yeah, that's so cool. Sarhad, do you have any good Kurdish proverbs for us to close out this episode?
Yes, we have a lot of idioms, proverbs related with hair in Kurdish culture, but we will use one of the most well-known and common one. It says in Kurdish, in Sorani Kurdish, Barishnia Baisha. Barishnia Baisha. It means, if you translate it, literally means not by the beard, but by the actions. I think you have a similar expression in English. It's called actions speak louder than beards.
Yeah.
Well, we have actions speak louder than words. And,
it was like
and
that.
this was
not beards. Yeah, actions speak
my attempt to mix the
louder.
proverbs. Actions speak louder than beards.
Yes.
That's right. That's the correct one.
So in the United States, we might say actions speak louder than words. And so it sounds like you're saying actions speak louder than beards. Just because you have a nice big beard doesn't make up for harmful actions.
And that's extra meaningful because we've seen all of the weight and meaning that's connected to beards in this culture. But you see the wisdom of the culture still kind of shining through in this proverb where it says, even if you have this thing that we think is very significant and very meaningful, really at the end of the day, what matters is how you live. That's what makes you a good man, not your beard. That's what makes you a real man. And so I think there's some real wisdom there. for us to take away.
Very wise words. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for this fascinating conversation, a journey through Kurdish culture and hair. I look forward to joining you guys for the conclusion of season 1 of Rushmall in our next episode, and we will be back in a couple weeks with that. All right, take care, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Rushmall, the Kurdish Culture Podcast. If you found this episode helpful, we'd love it if you'd share it with others. Subscribe for even more content exploring Kurdish culture.